Hi, welcome to Urban Insights. I'm Jayashree Kurup. I today spoke with Debolina Kundu, the director of the National Institute of Urban Affairs. We were talking about the growth of towns and cities across the country. The number of towns and cities under the Amrut scheme has grown significantly. So we wanted a context of how many towns and cities are actually coming up in India.
So, if we look at the urban frame in terms of, since we do not have the 2021 census with us, but from the government estimates we have 4,962 statutory towns. Among them 62 are cantonments and 4,900 are statutory towns as of for the last 2 months data. And we also have, even by conservative estimates, 1,000 new census towns have been added. So, there are roughly 5,000 census towns and 5,000 statutory towns. And when we talk about planning, I suppose the Niti Aayog report a few years back did bring out that most of our cities, more than 60% of our cities are not planned, and these are the statutory towns. So, in terms of development, I think Amrut has really come up with a strategy of bringing out about GIS-based master plans, and this is where I think lot of impetus has come from the Government of India. City master plans are being prepared. In the first set, the 500 class 1 cities, and even the smaller towns between 50,000 population to 1 lakh populations, they are also there in the frame. So, that is something which is going on, and also under the 15th Finance Commission, a few cities have been identified, I think 8 cities in all, which are going to get 1,000 crore rupees as an incentive fund for development. So, that is yet to be formed up.
So once these cities are established, how do they grow? Is it because of urban migration? What were they earlier and what are they now in their new profiles?
So, if you look at the way cities have been urbanizing, see, we have a notion that India is rapidly urbanizing, which is, I would say, it's incorrect. Because if you look at the growth pattern, the rate of urbanization, that was growing since independence until the 70s. From 80s onwards, there has been a decline in the urban growth pattern, and it is only in the last decade it came up from 2.73 to 2.76, the annual exponential growth rate, and that was basically because of the growth of the census towns. So, if we look at the pattern of urbanization, let me come up with the first characteristics. We have a very top heavy urban structure, around more than 500 class 1 cities, and which account for 70% of the urban population, which means it is a top heavy urbanization pattern. And if you look at numbers, again we have a very the reverse. We have a very big base in terms of numbers, but not in terms of population. So, that 30% of the non-class 1 cities are concentrated in around 9,000 small towns, if you take into account the census towns and the statutory towns together, or maybe more than that. So, if we have, I do not know what are the exact figures, but we had around 500 class 1 cities in 2011 census, maybe 100 more have been added. So, 600 on an average. So, the remaining 9,400 small towns I say less than 1 lakh population, 100,000 population. So, they have a very big base in terms of numbers. So, that is one thing. You asked me about migration. So, again, since the 80s, the migration, rural to urban migration has been quite sluggish. It is something between 20 to 22%, and it has not been increasing the way we think, because we look at the short term migrants, we see people, we see trains being overcrowded, people coming to urban areas, but those are all short term, and a few are also circular migration which is happening. So, in terms of the way cities are growing, you asked me about the pattern of city growth. I think what we have noticed between 2001 and 11, the 0.03% increase in the rate of urbanization has been basically because of in situ urbanization. A few cities have expanded in their areas, as for example Bangalore or Hyderabad, where you find a city expansion in their city boundaries. So, many villages have come in inside the city boundary. So, that is one way of urbanization happening. The other is in migration and also population increase within the city because of natural growth. The third thing, which is the most perceptible, is in situ urbanization, which means existing rural areas have become urban, right? And why did that happen? Because of sectoral diversification, which means people in the villages are no more employed in the farm sector. So, non-farm sector has become more dominant in employment generation. And when this has happened, we also looked the RGI also looks at the population. So, if a settlement has 5,000 population, 75% of the male main workers engaged in non-agriculture, non-farm, and that settlement has a density of at least 400 persons per square kilometer, and if all these three criteria satisfied together, then that settlement is taken as a census town. But again here, because urban development in India is a state subject, until and unless the state government recognizes these census towns into as statutory towns, whenever the notification happens, they continue to be under the Ministry of Rural Development. So, that is hidden urbanization, and that is the reason it becomes messy.
One of the starting points for new urban planning may be to create the employment potential and assessment of the employment potential of these towns and cities.
I think so. I think it is very important, very crucial, not only employment but also planning, because census towns have emerged because of employment. I won't say that fresh new employment has come up, but the sectoral diversification has happened. People who were working in the farm sector have shifted to the non-farm, to an extent that that settlement has become more urban. Not only urbanism as a way of life, but also urban characteristics coming up, which means more of industry and service sector coming up in place of the farm sector. So, I think this is one area where we need to really the government at all levels need to work and also incentivize. So, there could be a market town, there could be a need for storage activities, right? There could be a handicraft census town which is looking at more of handicrafts. There could be the handloom industry, there could be some manufacturing, there could be some service sector. So, there could be need for the transport connectivity, the market in the hinterland, or maybe connection with the primate city of that region. So, more of inter-urban rural linkages that needs to come up while we plan for either both employment and also the overall regional growth of that I won't say that node, but overall growth of the entire urban cluster, and that could also help in benefiting from the agglomeration economies.
So, when these cities and towns are they planned locally? Are they planned organically, or should there be structured competitions and things like that?
No, planning does not happen organically. Rather, we are going towards unplanned development because of organic development of urban areas, right? So, why did this census towns or the periphery, the growth happening more in the periphery? What we found in terms of if you look at Kerala was just 25% urban in 2001. Now, in 2011, it's 47.78%. So, it's almost doubled. And why did this? And it has happened. I was working with the Kerala State Urban Planning Department, helping them prepare their Kerala Perspective Plan. So, where we found that all class 1 cities depopulated between 2001 and 11, whereas if you look at the number of million plus cities, that has increased tremendously. So, how did that happen? Because the periphery, the population in the periphery increased. So, people from the core, they shifted out to the periphery, and why did they do so? Because there is no, there are no planning norms. So, you get cheaper labor compared to the city. Within the city, if you compare the labor, the wage rates, it is slightly cheaper outside. You get land at a slightly cheaper rate. And third, I think the master plan norms are not that stringent beyond the city boundary. So, all these reasons, I think they help in creating the mess. So, whatever mess you find because and which is finally manifested in terms of air pollution, housing crisis, you find lot many housing coming up not within the city, but in the periphery outskirts and leading to sprawls. Why does that happen? Because any builder can just build anything. The building bylaws are not either non-existent, or if they are there, you can always there are ways of getting out of it. So
now this kind of planning requires a huge amount of finances. Where would those come from? The center, the state, locally generated? We wanted Debolina's perspective on this.
So I think I won't say that it is one level of financing. Finance does come from the center to the states, from the Central Finance Commission, financing also through the state finance commissions, and the state in addition to both the Central Finance Commission and the State Finance Commission, we have the centrally sponsored schemes, the missions, the Smart City Mission in 100 cities. We have the Amrut, which is now Amrut 2.0, looks at all statutory towns. The Swachh Bharat Mission looks at all statutory towns. The Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana looks at all statutory towns. So, financing from the center to the states, to the cities, but many of this financing and also the Central Finance Commission funds do have a conditionality. So, cities which can perform better, they have access to funding. So, and the cities, they themselves, they are able to, I won't say all are able to, but they do generate finances from property taxes, usage charges, and other innovative sources of financing which are coming up. So, financing from the center, from the state, from the city itself, and also the parastatals which are there where they also generate resources.
It's all very well to plan locally, but do we need capacity building at the local level?
Yes, I think that is very important. We need staff who need to be trained, right, who are already there, their capacities need to be enhanced, and also new staffing needs to happen, at least in the small towns where there may be only one sanitary inspector and he may have to perform 10 different type of tasks for which he is not capable enough. So, we need more staff, and we need the existing staff to be capacitated. And in addition to that, not only the municipal staff, but also the councilors who are there for the people. I think many of them still do not know what the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act is, what are the various missions at the national level, or within the state there are also various development programs. So, many of them are not aware of that. I think, and that capacity building needs to be a very regular affair. It should not be a one time thing and you forget about it.
Finally, does the state determine which cities get the finances? After all, the funds come from the center to the state, and the state has to devolve it to the cities. So, who determines which cities get it?
The census towns do not get finances from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, because until and unless they are recognized, the state, because urban development is a state subject, the urban development department within the state needs to notify the census town into a statutory town. So, that decision is taken by the state. But here I would like to bring out a very important thing which has been initiated by the government of Odisha, what Orissa government has done, I think a few years back, they have brought out the rural urban transition policy, as per which existing census towns will be notified into statutory only when they meet certain criteria which would be at par with existing statutory towns. So, you just do not notify settlements as urban and you forget about them, but raise their quality of services, their infrastructure in a planned manner, and then you notify it. So, you do not have the mess being created later on. So, some planned interventions happen since the inception, and the government of Odisha has also brought out a few other measures like the Jaga mission, about which I think you are aware, giving the land rights to the people, and also the Mukta mission, where the migrants, the reverse migrants got urban employment guarantee, and these people also worked with the city government in terms of, and they were recognized as the fourth tier of governance, the slums. So, the people were given land, then they were given employment, and these people, they together they build their community in terms of engagement of the SHGs and also construction of their houses. So, I think this is one good model which could be replicated in other states, provided that the state also parts with its land, because Odisha government did part with its land for the poor, and it was in situ development. So, yesterday a few developers from Mumbai came and visited me, and I was very happy to understand that these people, they were also aware that even if there is in situ development in high rises, poor still they are affected. And I asked them how. I said, they said, see madam, when they are housed on a vertical structure, they lose their the connection with their livelihood. I said, why you are not displacing them? They are there where they were. They said, even then a kabadiwala will need a space within that slum to put whatever he is selling out, or anyone working in the leather industry will need a space, but once they are housed in a vertical structure, they will lose that area. So, how do we house them? So, I said, good that at least there is some thinking about housing the poor in a manner where they do not lose their livelihood.
Indian cities have a large number of problems, and we asked Debolina to categorize them. What are the main problems in Indian cities?
I think planning, governance and finance. These are the three main areas of intervention which is needed. With peripheralization, I think more of sprawling is happening, where again governance comes into play. There are so many agencies which are working, and at times each works in silos. So, you find various, even within the city of Delhi, you find that roads are being dug up today by one agency, tomorrow they are being again dug up by some different agency. So, there is very little coordination among agencies within the city. So, that is one. Cities working in silos, funding is a major issue. It is not that at times it does happen that there is funding, but you do not have the capacity to absorb that funding, and that again brings back to the question of the capacity of the officials who are working in the ULBs. So, that is also very important, and then until and unless you have the governance part and the planning, the finance part, how do you plan? For planning also you need the competence of the people who are there to plan.
The most interested stakeholder in a city are its citizens. So, what is the role of citizens in this new equation?
So, I think participatory governance, participatory budgeting is one form of engagement of citizens. You find in big cities participatory governance coming in the shape of RWS, Residents Welfare Associations, coming in a big way. And I had written a chapter on, I won't say a chapter, an article on elite capture of urban governance. So, here people who have the wherewithal do get access to governance mechanisms. So, a slum dweller does not know whom to reach out in a big city if he needs a ration card, or he needs some sort of access to various services. Whereas, for people like you and me, it is very easy, and if there is some public service needed in the colony where I live, it's very easy for me to reach out to the RW and also know the water timings, or if there is a power cut which is scheduled to happen. So these services are, it's very easy for us to reach out through the RWs, but if you for a poor person, that mechanism of reaching out is still absent. I think we really need to work in those areas.
When you plan new cities, is this an opportunity to make sure that the cities are safe? How safe are our citizens in their cities, especially the vulnerable ones, the children, women, disabled, the aged, senior citizens, and also the economically backward citizens?
So that is one area I think where we still need to work, because in big cities this is, I think in smaller towns it's still safer because you know each, mostly people know each other, but in big cities, because of various reasons, safety has been an issue and it still is going to be an issue. But through Smart Cities mission and other centrally sponsored schemes, I think many of the cities have started putting up lights. One is the lighting of the streets, that is very important, and also surveillance. So that is coming up, but that is, I can't say that 100% of the city is lit up or it's going in the right direction. So there I think lot of effort needs to come up.
One of the big things in cities is to make it sustainable. How do you ensure that the economy becomes circular again? Is it something the cities have to do, or is it something that the citizens have to do?
I think that this is one area where the role of the government is important, but the role of the citizens are more important. Because if me as a consumer, I can restrict my demands to a certain extent, and really I am able to understand that this is what I need and this is what I do not. And if I can really curb my desires to have anything and everything on this earth, and I think that is one area where each citizen's role becomes important, creating awareness among people who do not have. Like there, if you go to any small town where water is still not scarce, you find there is a lot of water misuse, right? So each and every individual should be told that this is not the way you need to work. You need to understand the importance of water. So that is one. And also the point which you mentioned about circular economy, I think the role of industrialists, the role of the private sector, the role of citizens as a community, the role of the government, I think all needs to come together. We have, the Government of India has launched the Cities 2.0 program, where 18 cities have been selected, who will be working the Government of India will be working very closely with the local governments and the communities, and try to look at the waste sector and try to create a circular economy model which will work as a lighthouse for the other cities. So that is that has just begun.
If the pilot cities have to take 3 years to evolve models, will it not push the rest of the cities into a further crisis? After all Indian cities seem to be in a crisis.
So that has also been taken up by the Government of India. The Swachh Bharat mission is aware of these challenges, and there is a very clear-cut plan of action for the next few years to look at these cities and to see how things happen in a manner that we do not have this legacy waste going on in a manner that it cannot be cleared up, but things are happening in this direction. I think that's happening, because we had a meeting here 2 days before, and we are working very closely with both the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and the Rural Development, the Gramin and Urban. They are synergizing. For the first time I have found both ministries working together for the fecal sludge management. Our ministry is not only looking at the cities and the peri-urban areas, but also looking at the rural areas. So, if an STP plant is being set up, it not only caters to the towns, but also the adjoining villages. So, that synergy is happening. It will take time. India is a big country and there are challenges, but things are happening.
And on that optimistic note, I said goodbye to Debolina Kundu. Thank you so much, Debolina, for that wonderful, wonderful podcast.